Okay, cool.
If you watch the podcast, you know.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes.
Hello and welcome back to Boys Gone Wild. This is a special episode indeed. It's the return of Bebe Cave from the short-lived spin-off series Girls Gone Wild. I thought that was actually quite a stupid idea in the end, and now I brought her into Boys Gone Wild. She'll be a regular guest. It's great to have her on. When she came on, we got more than triple views of what I'd normally get, but that sort of does open up people who are not really my demographic being incels with learning difficulties. But having Bebe on the show meant that a lot of her fans started coming in. And I think the most hate I've ever got was actually from doing an episode with Bebe. Actually, I think I would be lying if I didn't get slightly turned on by hate comments, and it's a real joy how clearly disappointing it is for a lot of Bebe's fans that of all the people she could have gone out with, it's me, and that's a real fairly sadistic but truly profound joy I get knowing that there's quite romanticism about Bebe on Instagram and that she's got quite mysterious, what's her boyfriend like? And the idea that they can come to my page and see me talking directly out of my arsehole and be incredibly disappointed is actually something that brings me a lot of joy. So on the last episode, Chris YTFC tried some hate, but it got taken down because I think he used a swear word. He said, is this an attempt to create a new Nathan Barley, Shoreditch wanker type character, or is this massive douchebag who he actually is? I think who he actually is. Surely Bebe can do better. She probably can. And then he changed that to Horatio Gould. Everything about your look says I'm trying so hard to be quirky and interesting. Now, those are all great points, seeing as we did do a fashion podcast and I was dressed like a cunt.
A turbo cunt.
A turbo cunt. And that's why it was really pleasurable knowing how upset it made certain people. But anyway, welcome to the show, Bebe Cave.
Thank you very much. That felt like a long minute.
Yes.
It's very nice to see the evolution of Horatio's podcast. I think that it's been transcendental, it's been important, it's been moving, and I thank you for your service to the podcast world.
I think it's definitely been a key cultural cornerstone of this year, and it's definitely helped a lot of people through who the type of people I'm helping are people who would be at risks of starting school shootings. So I think the people I've saved, arguably your brother's an NHS doctor.
Yes.
I'd say arguably I've saved more lives by talking people off the ledge or making them put their guns down. But
he's actually a very big fan of this podcast.
Oh, that's nice.
And my other brother isn't, but he did put up this sign.
He did. Your brother did put up this sign. So. But how do you feel about people giving me hate for saying that you can do better than me? How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I'm not particularly familiar with people saying that apart from that one video. And it was just I wish that people told me that more. The one other experience I have of that is when I did bring you to a Christmas party last year, and you were late, and you turned up a little...
That was one of the drunkest I've been.
A little drunk.
Incredibly drunk.
Which is fine, it was Christmas, and you're a 22-year-old man. And this actress at the party, when I sort of explained who you are and that my boyfriend was coming, and then you turned up and, you were a little, rowdy.
I was a lot that evening, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it is always a lot going into a room full of actors who are all doing a synchronized dance routine for no real reason.
Yeah, because I mean, we've been going out for a bit over a year now, and it is very interesting whenever I meet your colleagues, and then when you meet my colleagues, because your world is acting, which I think the best way to describe the difference is, when you're buying fruit, and there's like the fruit on the top level, which is like it all looks like a cartoon thing of like an apple, and then you have that other box that's cheaper, which is like all the gnarled fruit and the boxes of all the ones which are like don't look as good. They taste fine, but they're cheaper because they're aesthetically strange.
Exactly.
That's what comedians are. That's the box we are. Which
they're the odd box.
The odd box.
Which I think is actually a business.
Yeah, it is. And that's the business I'm working in as well.
But anyway, this actress was not particularly impressed by Horatio, clearly, despite the fact that she jumped in a photo booth with the two of us and insisted on being in the middle and trying to kiss us both.
Yeah.
And then she texted me the next day saying how nice it was to see me, inviting me to a Christmas party that she was having, and saying, but with regards to your boyfriend, the jury's out on that one because, you know, you can do better, babe. And there are lots of fish in the sea. So judgmental.
No, obviously that's an incredibly cunty thing to say.
She's a crazy person though, so it doesn't matter.
I really like that. That is a big, and it is a big problem. Is that I'd be lying if I said that wasn't something that was a big appeal for me.
And actually your goal, I think.
Yeah.
I think to make as many enemies as you can along the way, which is what I've always loved about.
Yeah. What do you think of the big differences between actors and comedians then?
Well, I think that if you looked at the differences between me and you, I'm desperate to please everyone, right? And you don't really mind who you upset as long as the people that really connect with you and like you have a very strong connection there. Whereas seemingly my connections with people that I work with and friends in general tend to be a little bit more shallow, but more generally positive. So I think that it's like you could then extend that to actors and comedians as well. Actors are trying to sort of be a surface level niceness, whereas comedians are definitely, you know, making it more difficult for them to be likable. But when they say something that you click with, you're going to like go wild. It's I don't know, you're somebody that deals in extremes and I deal in more kind of platitudes. It's
true, yeah. I think it's weird, and I think that hanging out with comedians where it's like this weird game of like authenticity, of like it's like an authenticity dick measuring contest, where it's like, I'm fucking so authentic, you know, I'm fucking more authentic, and like having that sort of going around where you're all just trying to be who you truly are as much as you possibly can be. It means when you go into any other world where being authentic is actually incredibly abrasive, it can really stand out, especially when you meet actors
who are basically the opposite. They're completely fake. Layers and layers and layers and layers of fakeness and fake friends and fake coffee dates and, you know, whatever. So it is a really interesting contrast, but given that I've always jarred with that side of acting, I always love the actual performing part of it.
You're not very actor-y.
But I hate the kind of the networking and the glossiness of it and the fakeness. I think part of the reason why you were so appealing to me was because you represented a complete opposite to that. So,
and I think I remind you of your dad.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
No. But the reason why I've got Beebs here today, I'd love to say it was planned, but it was because Andrew couldn't make it. Yeah. So she was filling in.
Yeah, and I was just hanging around the area.
You were hanging around the area anyway.
I was just knocking on the door for a while, seeing if he was in. He eventually opened up.
I genuinely had another guest booked in for when Andrew, but he couldn't
He
come
also
either.
Cancelled, so I am third option.
You are, and that's like that. It does sound like I'm doing like a teasing sort of like cute sort of joking, not joking, but you genuinely are the third choice for being here. Yeah. But thank you very much for coming.
It's okay.
I thought we'd use this time to do a sort of 2020 in review, because in general, I've been gigging a fair bit, so I kind of see people. In general, you're one of the only people I've seen all year, most of it has been spent in this room here.
Exactly.
And I think we've dealt with 2020 pretty well, considering, and I think we'll use this episode for anyone out there who's trying to work out how do you survive 2020 and what has, just do the year in review in general. So how have you felt about 2020 off the bat?
Pretty shit.
Sure.
But I guess when you kind of extrapolate certain elements of it, there are real kind of, hidden gems, I guess. And also I think in the context of our relationship, most of it has been during the pandemic. Yes. So if I were to write off the pandemic and say it was just awful from start to finish, that would also be saying that our relationship has been rubbish, which, arguably it hasn't, I guess.
Arguably, there's definitely an argument to be made.
So...
what percentage of our relationship has been during lockdown?
Well, if you think about
it's probably been about 9 months.
Yeah.
So probably about 70% of our relationship has been through lockdown. So to be honest, in the way that people talk about relationships being tough over lockdown, I think when we come out of lockdown is when we're really going to be put under pressure.
Exactly, because we're going to have all of these weird distractions and noises and lights and sounds and other people.
Yeah.
Whereas up until this point, we basically have just been just chatting shit to each other.
I mean, the whole year, but our relationship has been we've got on worryingly well.
Yes.
It's almost a turn off how easily we slipped into a sort of. It was like it felt like we were like not just a married couple, like we're like an old married couple.
Yeah. Basically the same
with
person.
like disabilities, bedbound.
Yeah. We're the grandparents in Charlie and the Chocolate
We were
Factory,
literally like,
but we're both sets of grandparents.
Yeah.
We're the ones at the end and also the ones at the other end.
Yeah, so like because obviously our world is this room pretty much. We've lain at every angle in that bed, and we've been all the grandparents because we've been spread all across the room.
Exactly. We even have the same gestures now and ways of. I mean, it's like you. One of the wonderful things about this year is that Horatio has taught me a lot about. He's taught me a lot about like philosophical terms and books about postmodernism and why capitalism is bad and all this stuff.
Mainly that.
Mainly that.
Because I know a lot of guys. I know a lot of guys will be watching this, waiting to make sure that I haven't let her run astray. Don't worry, she's a Marxist. It's happened. She's joined the revolution.
Yes.
We're going to bathe in the blood of the bourgeoisie. Sorry, as you were saying.
But one of the interesting things that one of the interesting things I've learned about, like, say, postmodernism, the layers of sort of fakeness and irony that we pile on top of each other, nothing is new anymore. We now have sort of code words for things, sentences that we would have previously said.
Yeah.
We now have like a word or a phrase. In fact, sometimes we borrow stuff from Vines that we've enjoyed or TikToks. And we think that it's so individual. Like, I say something and I think that I'm going to be expressing something to you, but actually I just have to say one word or one like perfect and you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's kind of worrying that we're sharing the same brain at this point.
Yeah, so we've spent so much time together, we've almost collapsed into like being at one point an 8-year-old married couple, and then also sort of the primary stage of being like a toddler, where we're communicating with sort of, now it's just been reduced to merely noises and symbols.
Exactly.
In the way that an old person on their deathbed can only make certain noises to talk about certain things. Exactly. And someone learning language for the first time does as well. So that's sort of, we're kind of babies and old people simultaneously.
No,
the only thing we are not is our actual age.
Yes, young, healthy people in the prime of their life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's going to be strange.
Yeah.
It's going to be really strange when things are normal. If things will ever go back to normal, but we can deal with that when it comes to it.
Yeah, because we neither of us have real jobs. Like we've kind of been sniffing around finding money where we can. I do like podcasts here and there. You get some acting work here and there.
But mostly it's just Horatio helping me do self tapes in this room, and him making the same joke every time that we'll send it in and the casting director will say no, but they'll be like, who is that handsome voice behind the camera?
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Bring him in.
Because it's like when Bebe does self-tapes, normally it's her mum on a phone with like a shaky thing, and then I treat that as like an opportunity to show off just how good I can make them. So I use this camera, I use these lights, I make them incredible. You look amazing, and then don't get the role, which is the real.
Exactly, because it shows that I'm the problem.
Yeah, I think it's because it's definitely not a problem with my technique, because it is fantastic. But we've kind of fallen into the routine over lockdown with the kind of lack of jobs, that the things that kind of kept us going, and the reason why we've kind of got on well is because of a similar shared taste. And this is sort of a shout out episode, I feel, to all of the shows that have
kept us from breaking up.
Surprising shows, because I guess what I found, I used to watch TV like heavy dramas, epics. I used to watch things that caused a lot of pain, and I didn't ever even see TV and film as a sort of type of enjoyment. No. I saw it as more of like, I'm going to sit here and reflect on my own insignificance, and then I'm going to talk to people about it ad TV.
Very earnestly, yeah.
Very earnestly. But
kind of like self-punishment in a way.
Self-punishment. It's like wearing a hair shirt as a monk. But this year, I don't think I'll be able to deal with conflict.
No. Succession is like the most dramatic thing.
That's the most, and I struggle. I've had to take so many breaks, and I don't know if you guys have found this, but watching
you guys, because
there's so much shit in the world, there's so much conflict in reality in the news. I just have been I've been really struggling to watch any shows where I form a bond with a character and then they go through issues, which is the annoying thing is that's literally the foundation of narrative is characters going through conflict. That's literally what makes something a story is conflict. And I've been desperately trying to find things without any conflict.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that is maybe if you wanted to be really over-reflective, this year, apart from the fact that the pandemic in and of itself and people dying from the virus is a conflict, you know, and it's emotional. But in terms of the normal things that we would be doing in our life and going out and seeing things and experiencing stuff, we're not having the same sort of conflicts and dramas and interesting things going on in the world. So maybe it makes sense that on the smaller scale of what you actually kind of digest and consume, like in terms of media, maybe the reason why we don't want to watch loads of really big, crazy, dramatic conflict is because it's going to remind us how little of that is actually going on in the world right now. Instead, we're kind of confining ourselves to smaller, safer, colourful places, typically animated, set in a different world, because the only thing that we can do is escape.
Yeah, so yeah, it's weird because it's like we've become infantilized where I felt like I was like was maturing out of childhood, but this has sent me right back to places I thought I'd got out of, where I now just sort of like I'm going like putting myself up to like a dialysis machine and just sort of pumping in bright, colourful images into my head. But the things we've been watching, because we wake up in the morning, we watch shows in the morning, normally sitcoms with real people, but then so like we were watching sort of Seinfeld, Friends, Curb Your Enthusiasm, because it was just familiar. But then the people were just too real in it, and there was already too much conflict in those very sugary shows.
Especially Curb Your Enthusiasm. The cringeness of it, which obviously is like the whole premise, kind of just... Also, they just go to places, don't they? They just go to places. It makes me sad that we can't go to places. But the show that we're watching now, 30 Rock, they stay in one building.
Maybe that's why.
It's a reflection.
Maybe
of
that's
what's
why we
in our
like
show.
it, because they're isolated. Do you want to talk a bit about 30 Rock and how much we love that as a show?
Okay. You start. Also, I was just thinking that one of the only sort of conflicts of this year is when we had the couple here having sex. We both got a glass and listened at the wall.
Yeah, that was a bit of fun.
That was creepy.
Broke up the monotony of our...
Nice to hear other people living.
Increasingly isolated lives together. Right through this wall, we heard our neighbours smashing, and it's a real thrill. Hearing other people have sex is truly... It's better than having sex.
Totally.
No, it genuinely is. It's more exciting. It's so naughty.
You don't make a mess.
Yeah. Is it perverted that we got a glass and put our...
Well, the thing is, like, they were inviting listeners. They were making a lot of noise. But we haven't heard it since. So maybe that was just, one very special day.
And we didn't hear it before. And
exactly.
They've been there the whole time.
Exactly.
So it was clearly... It sounded like it was
somebody's
an explosion
birthday
of passion. Yeah, it feels like that. And...
that's that. The thing is, you get to a point in a relationship where you're not going to be able to ignite that kind of a passion anymore, but other people can, and that's really exciting.
But yeah, so what shows have you liked this year?
Okay, so 30 Rock is obviously great, and Tina Fey we think is amazing and wonderful in every way, and Alec Baldwin, runaway star from that
Incredible.
show. So really, if
people
you've not
sleep
watched
on 30
it,
Rock.
because I think it's a bit old, it's kind of naughties. You think that it's going to be one thing, but actually very,
it's a great show, man.
Very cleverly written. Huge recommendation.
Because it's like an American style show, and but it's so kind of authentically what it is, where it's just trying to do as many jokes they can squeeze in as possible, in as many jokes per minute as possible, and like that's what Americans do.
Also,
really well.
I think given that we both work in comedy and write for ourselves, and we're very influenced by British humour on the whole, it's really nice and important to watch something that's American and so tightly written and so lacking in self-pitying and stuff that British comedy kind of can be sometimes. I think it's been like I don't know, educational for both of us
Yeah.
to see how jokes can actually be written. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
cool.
it's funny because it's like I find a lot of my favourite moments in TV comedy are British shows because they're like I just find those scenarios really funny, but they're so painful to watch because nearly all British TV comedy is about how do we make this person as pathetic as possible, as embarrassed as possible.
Exactly.
And that's what Americans do so much better, is that they make things that are funny and uplifting, you know, which is why I think we've moved much more towards that sort of stuff.
But it's not wholesome, because I think we both have an issue with like wholesome stuff, right? 30 Rock is still kind of cutting enough that it doesn't like tip over the edge into being something that's like, you know, uplifting and is going to move you. Instead, it's just very, very funny and also positive. Yeah,
that's why I kind of get on board with things like Parks and Rec.
Yeah, that's just too wholesome.
It's just too much. Like, I don't want like a YouTube compilation of like 20 zany moments from this character, like 20 times, you know, Ron, you know, said it how it is and stuff like that, and how it's just like we have a bit of fun, but at the end of the day we're all friends. It's like that doesn't do it for me. So
also because that's not real life. Like real life isn't wholesome at all, and escaping into something that is sort of incredibly cutesy and wholesome and makes you want to go and live in, you know, the town that Parks and Rec is set or something like that, I don't think it's particularly healthy, because you're going to get such a huge contrast between that sort of imagined world of yours and the world that we actually live in. And I don't know, I just prefer stuff that feels a bit more kind of close to actual reality.
Well, you say that, but we instead have, I agree with that, but we also like things that are so removed from reality that they're not even in this world.
Okay, you mean like anime, so that's a completely different conversation.
Anime is like a different thing. It's like we can sort of deal with conflict if we're watching animated Japanese people.
As long as the conflict is taking place in
drawings.
Giant metal robots that children have to fight in order to save the world. That's the only way that I can digest my conflict.
Yeah, because it's funny how like anime's become like a trendy thing for like young adults, but it's just glorified cartoons, basically.
And big anime titties.
Yeah, it's like just because there's massive robots and like blood and like gore and the most absurd cleavages you've ever seen doesn't mean that you're not actually just fulfilling the same urge as watching cartoons on a Sunday morning when you're 8 years old.
Exactly. I mean, I guess, you know, maybe that sort of undermines the point that I was making, but I don't necessarily think it does, because I think that like live action comedy, you're always going to associate as more kind of closely resembling your own life and your own views. Anime, it's like, it's so hyperbolic, it's so unreal, that I think that you have to look at it in the way that you sort of look at poetry or paintings or something like that. It's expression that you can then take what you want out of it and relate it to your own life. You know? So what I take out of it is that I really like the way that anime girls look. I've started dressing like one.
Yeah.
That's what I found. I really enjoy it. I like the fact that all of the lead male characters all seemingly are voiced by women.
Yeah, they seem to be voiced by like, nervous women.
And because I feel like that represents male adolescence so perfectly, like having the trembling voice of a fully adult woman, I think that's quite fun.
It seems like a visual motif that appears throughout the animes we've watched is a nervous male protagonist framed underneath giant tits, as if it's like these as if it's an avalanche about to crush him.
Exactly, like his burgeoning sexuality and his fear about having to become who he has to become seemingly is encapsulated perfectly by being voiced by an adult woman.
And it's encapsulated by the visual image of terrifyingly
giant naked
just
women.
Giant tits about to... Yeah, it's these weird like Freudian nightmares of being crushed by ginormous breasts.
Neon Genesis Evangelion, that's some
wild shit. I mean, I recommend Neon Genesis Evangelion as the definitive anime, but you approach with care, because it is fucking nonsense. It's mental. I don't really know what happened during it. I know that it's shot in amazing ways. It's incredible visual stimuli. It's got some really deep meanings. There's incredible amounts of tits, but with all Japanese anime, why it's fascinating is because Japan is like sort of similar to the West, because it's been so westernized, but so different because it's been isolated for the last like 5,000 years.
It's unapologetically kind of mind-bending, you know?
Yeah, but it's also
it's not sort of saying, oh wow, look at how crazy this is. It just is. It's just showing you like these extraordinary scenarios and like creating this completely bonkers world. And, you know, it's not asking any questions of anyone. You just have to sort of get on board. And I really enjoy the fact that I don't understand a lot of what's going on, because you just have to pick up so much information so quickly. And it's really great. Like, that's pure escapism. You're not like thinking about, you know, how shit your hair looks or like what you have to do tomorrow. You're completely engrossed in trying to understand this world that's still so mysterious to me, you know? And I think that that's just awesome.
In general, it seems like there's the reoccurring kind of weird culture clashes of like, it's weird how it will go from like really intense emotional scenes of these like montages of someone's complete sense of self collapsing, and then switch to like pantomime slapstick, you know, and the way they just communicate with each other. And like the Japanese view of sex is so weird because they're really sexually conservative, but then they kind of get it out in drawings and stuff like that, which is like, I don't know, it seems... It's a big culture shock for sure.
It's definitely not minimizing femininity at all.
Some of them are.
Yeah, like, but I think they're really interesting characters.
Yeah, they are in that one show. That's why it's good. But in general, the Japanese view of women as presented in animes like Death Note, which is another good one.
As being real dumb bints.
Being dumb bints for sure.
But can you really argue that... in Western sort of cartoons or even just Western television, that they don't do that same thing? They don't portray females as, you know, certain tropes?
Yeah, they do, but it's like there's a weird... there seems to be like the way of sexualizing women in Japan is making them these sort of like dumb schoolgirls. That is like what's really hot, it seems, for a Japanese audience, are these sort of giggling, oh, like
and occasionally they have like a knife, you know, because they're like also an assassin, but they're still very, very young and vulnerable. Yeah, no, I can see that. Obviously it's all about like playing down the age, making them as youthful as possible. So obviously that is kind of slightly strange and problematic, but at the same time, and I think this is something that we've both sort of discovered as well during lockdown, like so much of the discourse about there being an issue between like the sort of attraction to younger women and older men liking younger women, or grooming or everything like that. It's obviously such a sort of interesting grey area, but at the same time, it is also stupid to try and pretend that we don't live in a world or like engage willingly in a culture that does promote youthfulness as being kind of attractive and sexual. Like, it's not crazy to stretch your mind to think that men would be sort of interested in younger women. And it's like, that's not wrong. That's not literally against your sort of like animal nature. That is just the way it is. It's about what you do with that and where the responsibility lies in, say, TV shows, making those younger characters and, you know, men obviously not acting on urges like to go and date like a 15-year-old. Like, that's obviously really fucking creepy. But to try and argue that like you wouldn't be attracted to younger women in general is stupid. And I think that, like, I don't know, the discourse around it can be really annoying sometimes. I think we're both pretty like anti-woke when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah,
well, to a certain extent. Yeah, I think a big... I think I'll put you up quickly on what you just said, but like, do you think... Because I think in feminism there seems to be now a healthy... It seems to be heading to a bit more of a healthy discourse where it's like women are now starting to realise that they can be hot. They can be feel validated by people finding them attractive, and that not be degrading or objectifying. And like, it seems like we're coming to a point now where it's like we're starting to work it out a bit more, where it's not all exploitation, you know. Absolutely,
I think that's really important, but at the same time it's still so confusing, because the same people that will be saying, isn't it so great and empowering that we, you know, can like admit that it's validating people finding us attractive, but at the same time will be saying, you know, 35-year-old men that go out with 19, 20-year-old girls are disgusting, like pedophiles, when like that just takes away all agency from women, you know. Like, if the 19 or 20-year-old woman is like actively posing in like a really sexual way and wearing stuff like in order to get that same validation that before she was saying it was so great that she can get to validate herself with. I don't understand why we think that we can like have our cake and eat it too. Like every person should have agency when they're an adult and be able to use that to their own benefit and also take the responsibility for that, you know. I think that feminism is something that I so strongly associated with before this year, before this pandemic. It was like unequivocal, you know, men are fucking assholes.
Sure.
And like women, God, you know, we were the underdogs for such a long time. We're taking back our ground now. And this pandemic, given how, I don't know, strange and different it's been, I think it's allowed for so much more kind of internal investigation. And because I've obviously been listening to more podcasts and reading more about it, realizing that like even feminism, this thing that I held with such high esteem before and put on such a pedestal, and it was just so obvious to me, like, oh, there's nothing, like, of course, like feminism is perfect. Women are badly treated compared to men and have always been. To realize that there are holes in that system too, and that maybe it's still something that needs to be worked on and thought about. You can't just like accept everything that a supposed feminist says. Like you have to actually do critical thinking for yourself and not just buy into these like pastel Instagram infographics about, you know, why this term is wrong and why everything, you know, you have to think about things so much more for yourself. Like that's something I'm grateful that the pandemic has taught me, and having someone like you to be able to talk about that stuff.
Tell you that women are trash.
Exactly, because you know, you really need to be put down a peg or two sometimes. Like look at how long I just spoke for. That was outrageous, and you should have told me to stop.
I'm going to start having a beeper if you go for a minute. Because I do want to keep my listeners. It has been a relief of both of us finding out that we both kind of accept that we don't know the truth about what's happening, and also find a lot of social politics in our circles, for want of a better term, repulsive.
Yes.
Because we're sort of in the sort of a group of, in London, being in any sort of creative industry, being near the heart of it in some ways, you do see the people who are framing the conversations. You know, when we have all these debates about wokeness and identity politics, it's like a lot of the time the disconnect between what actual people think and what's being presented in films, TV, news, it's like, why is such a minority view being presented as mainstream truth? And it's because the people who are pulling the levers of cultural power exist in a very small area.
Literally in a small bubble, mostly in North London.
Yeah, in a NW3 to NW6, exactly. Literally a small postcode. And it's been like really good. I think we've both, over the last kind of couple of years, I certainly when I first went to uni, I was sort of agreed with a lot of these ideas as being, that's truth. You know, people believe this because they're stupid and wrong, but luckily, because we're so great and we've read so many books and we're so good, we know what the truth is, and it's about educating. It's weirdly, it's a similar, the kind of, the way it's drummed into you is similar to the way that, like, you know, colonialists going to Africa would thought, we're on this sort of civilizing mission. You know, that sort of racism. It's sort of the same with how metropolitan liberals treat, you know, most working class people as having, like, sadly, they have not had the right lessons. They're idiots and they don't know what they're talking about, but it's our job to show them what the truth is. And
when in fact, like, they've lived a very privileged life, most of them, and they probably, when it comes down to it, would not sacrifice a single element of their lifestyle and their wealth and their general comfort to actually benefit people, which is where the real divide is. It's not about education or kind of identity politics at all. It's about literally the way people live. It's about the wealth of some and the poverty of others. And I don't know, I think that's just been like a big realization for me.
Been definitely.
Just kind of feeling such a huge disconnect with the kind of the politics of our generation. I wouldn't say that it maybe extends to everybody in our generation. We're kind of between generations anyway, millennials and Zoomers. But it is so interesting to really have had like this kind of this moment of thinking, wow, where do I lie? It's easier to think that you belong to a certain kind of like way of thinking that has like pretty sort of pictures online, you know, telling you all of the things that are bad that you have to do. It's much scarier to be like, okay, no, I'm going to try and think for myself and work out what I actually believe in. But to take it back to our relationship, that has been one of the really great things, is having somebody that you can kind of just test these ideas out to. Because I think
it's it was like that one time when you were like, on the next episode of We Can't Talk About This Right Now, do you think it'd be cool if I wore blackface? And I was like, I see where you were going with that, but I think it's not the right time now.
Exactly.
But it's like, if you didn't have that, if you didn't have that space to like try out ideas that you think might work, and like that one wasn't your best idea for sure. But it's fine, because we have we create a safe space for ideas where some things might not work.
Exactly.
And, you know,
I think it's dangerous because we're both incredibly Aryan,
that's
so we
I
have
agree.
to be very careful.
I completely agree.
Great.
What things annoy you about me?
Okay. Well, straight off the bat, you're a terrible texter. Really, really terrible.
Sure.
Not just in the normal boy sense, but just actually in terms of like, it almost like it confounds me sometimes. I'm like, how? How? You also have your fucking read receipts on, which I find incredibly aggressive.
Take them off.
Incredibly aggressive. If I sent him a nice text about something,
why do you think you need my validation so much? Because I regularly read what you send me and then don't respond.
He chooses not to respond.
Is that not the biggest power play you've ever seen? Like, leaving those read receipts on is what gives me the upper hand.
I feel like you're constantly trying to like regain territory that you feel you lost at the beginning of the relationship when you pursued me. So now that you got me, you think that the only way that you can come across as kind of like, you know, the masculine, manly man that you are is by just actively refusing to respond to me. I find that really fucking annoying.
No, I don't know. I'm bad with texting because it's like we see each other 50% of the week, 3 to 4 days of the week, and we spend all our time together. We see whenever I see my friends, I see it with Bebe. It works fine, perfectly. We spend all the time sharing, talking about things, just being in a relationship. When she leaves, I guess this is quite a masculine thing, is it's like, for you see it as surely a deficiency in like my affections for you, that when that I'm not thinking about you all the time, or that I can bear to be without you. Whereas for me, I'm like, I've just poured my whole heart and soul into you for 4 days, and when you're gone, it's like me just trying to my head goes blank. And that's something that I think that's the thing. That's what it seems like.
Think about men and women.
See, it sounds like a Def Jam bit. Like, man, see, I'm going to try and sell it as like a Def Jam bit. See, the thing about women is they just don't understand about man. Because this is the thing. Women, you're not listening, okay? We think about nothing, okay? You know, you girls, you're always thinking about things. It's always, when you come back, you know, and you're like, you always think we're thinking about something. Huh? We're thinking about nothing, okay?
I get it. You know, and I think about you all the time, and not always in like flattering ways.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, normally if I don't respond to you, you build up this whole narrative and you're ready to come back with this kind of like anger and fury about how, like, well, if he doesn't love me, well, if he doesn't think that's cool, well, you know, I've got fucking news for him. And then you come back and you're like, you have like one moment of rage. I'll be nice to you, and it'll go within like a second.
Exactly, because it's very easy when I'm actually there in person with you to realise that you literally have been thinking about nothing.
I've been thinking about nothing, and it's like, what were you doing instead of texting me? I was staring at my ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. So
I was staring at my ceiling. I was half naked in a towel, still drying off, and I was on TikTok for like 45 minutes.
Exactly. So, you know, that's something that...
and I just don't like texting as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't particularly like texting either. And I'm not a great texter myself. I guess
because I don't like texting you as well, because I see you... I feel like... I am pretty responsible with text for people who I basically never see, and also... can never find the time to call, where it's like, if someone sends me something specific and we have a conversation about that, that's great. But when it's like, I know I'm going to see you in like a day or 2 days, It just seems mental me trying to explain how my day is. I'll tell you when I see you.
I don't ask how your fucking day is. Okay, what do I do that annoys you then?
You steal. But BB has this weird thing where it's odd that, because now you've hit puberty and you're an attractive woman, it's weird that you have some personality traits of the sort of chubby, weird-looking kid you used to be, which is still inside you. So it's like, it weirdly doesn't click with the fact that you're like an attractive woman now, intelligent, funny, all of that. But it's weird that you're an attractive woman. You're an ugly girl inside an attractive woman's body. Is what you are.
That's so true.
Yeah.
My soul is Ugly Betty.
Yeah,
sure.
that's what it is.
She's
and it's like, I heard a story that you once went missing, and they found you when you were 3 years old. If you've seen a picture of B when she's 3 years old, she had like a bob cut, and you were just spooning directly out of a tub of butter. And that's what I realised is actually what your true essence is. You can do all, you can all look confident and do all that, but deep down, that's what you are.
That's my soul.
And like how you used to steal things from friends' houses just for the thrill of stealing. So you have this weird thing.
Food. Let's just get that clear. Food. But that's because I wasn't allowed sugar and stuff as a child because they were just worried about my my weight issue. Yeah. But that was just because I used to force feed myself so much sugary stuff because I wasn't allowed the sugar. It was very much a catch-22 cycle. So then
but she loves the thrill of stealing, that she'll like take
I now can't quite get it out of my system.
She takes things that she could easily ask for and I'd easily give, but she likes taking them and then telling me she's taking about them afterwards.
Yeah, like literally last night.
You just take things, but it's like, they're not things that are like, I need or are stealing, but she acts like...
I'm like, can I have a biscuit?
Yeah, she asks me for things that which makes you feel like I'm the one who's choosing whether she can have them.
Yeah, but the thing is, it reminds me of those fucking dads at your friends' houses that when you used to go over, when you used to say, "Can I go to the bathroom, please?" and they used to go, "No, I don't think that you can actually." Like dad joke 101. I fucking hate those dads.
But that's a dad.
Of course, I'm going to ask. I'm not just going to walk into your bathroom.
That's a dad at a friend's house who you've just met. So yes, they're being a prick, because why? It'd be weird if you just fucking went and pissed all over his toilet and didn't ask. That's why I like to frame those questions with like, "Can I pee out of my dick into your toilet bowl, please?" Like aggressively reframe it, and then it'll like throw them off balance. But you can't treat me, because we spend all our time together. So why are you asking me questions as if I'm your friend's dad?
Because otherwise I'm just going to steal it, okay?
Yeah.
I have to ask, otherwise I'm just going to steal it. Last night, for example, we were playing a board game and I got kicked out relatively early on. And whilst you and the others were in the room and I went to the kitchen, I saw that there was a jar of unopened Nutella and I didn't know it was yours for sure. I assumed it might be, but I also knew there was a 30% chance that it was one of Horatio's housemates too.
Yeah. And that's what turned you on a bit.
Instead of thinking, no, it might be one of the others, so I probably can't open this Nutella, I just felt my body just urging me to fucking open it, rip it open, look around, see who was there, get a speculoos biscuit, dip it in, eat it as quickly as I can. I heard somebody walking and I had to run away. It was so thrilling. And I was like,
so bizarre.
I could have just done that and not worried about it. Why did I have to make that like a Mission Impossible movie? But that's me. That's where I get my kicks. That's where I get my hijinks.
Yeah, that's what is one of the funniest things about you, is that you try and...
I just never feel like I deserve anything.
So you create these scenarios where you're being naughty and you're not being naughty at all.
I felt so guilty about it for like 2 hours afterwards.
You love that guilt. And
I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, Adam or Taha are going to come in and be like, who opened my Nutella?
Yeah. But speaking of Mission Impossible, actually...
Yes.
Recently, it's just broke that Tom Cruise has had a freak out on set of Mission Impossible about COVID-19. We'll play a little bit for you now.
We are the gold standard. You're back here in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every studio at night. Insurance companies. Producers. And they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you I don't ever want to see it again.
And so he's properly gone. I don't know what they've done. So they're shooting Mission Impossible, which is one of the only films shooting in this very up and down period. And clearly someone's broken social distancing protocol, and he's gone off the boil in a very ego Scientology way. How do you feel about what Tom Cruise is saying?
I think it's absolutely absurd. It's just so, like, it perfectly sums up the way that people that are kind of like the actors or the glossy parts of any kind of business model think that their voice is so much more important than everyone else. When actually, like, all of the other people working on that set aren't just like cogs in the machine. They are the people that actually make the Mission Impossible film happen. Obviously, he lends his face and his name and his fame to it. But like the fact that he's speaking to them just so vitriolically, and obviously so Scientology-ish as well. Like, you can just tell that like that's been drummed into him in all of like the, like, what is it called? The audio sessions, you know? Like that particular tone of voice.
Auditing
thing.
Yeah.
But it's just the arrogance with which he speaks to people like they're these fucking idiots, and he's just like imparting knowledge onto them as if they don't fucking know. Like, I've been on a film set since the COVID restrictions were happening, and it's really hard to keep like everybody in check, everybody with their masks on all the time. But ultimately, it's a huge adjustment that everyone's making, and everyone's trying their best. I just think it's so fucking arrogant of him to think that he can talk to people in that way.
It's really interesting, the moralising around COVID, because I really don't know where I stand.
It's new. How are we supposed to
the problem is that it's like, on the one hand, it is the big problem, and it's killing loads of people and it's tearing lives apart, and the sooner this is over, the better for everyone. And a lot of people are struggling more than others and stuff like that. So it is important, but it feels like, I don't know how I would feel if, you know, maybe once if I'd forgotten my mask and I'd gone on the tube and then someone started shouting at me for like one time. You know, they in that moment technically have quite a big power thing over me, but is that right that you can chastise someone when you don't even know anything about them or anything like that?
No, I don't think that's right at all.
And like, yes, it is, because it's a really hard one to frame, because it's like, in general, we should all be following these things, but any minor slip-ups...
No one person is more important or has more responsibility than anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's a constant evolving thing, and everybody is like making mistakes and slip-ups, but also at the same time trying, hopefully.
And it is funny, sorry.
No, that's what I was going to say.
It is funny hearing him speak so impassionedly about saving an entire industry on the set of Mission Impossible 7. There's just something funny about Tom Cruise just like standing on a pulpit saying like, "We are here to save the world. We are the last foundation of the fight against COVID."
I've been on the phone with producers every night, every studio. What I love is the idea that somebody recorded that on one day, but I think he probably has a rant like that every single day.
Yeah.
And the crew are just going like, "Oh, Tom's doing his shouting match.
Just let him go. Every single night.
Just let him go.
Every single night. I called the boss of Warner Brothers. The boss. It's mad. It was Warner Brothers. I was speaking to the boss. Okay, he knew me. He called me Tom. Okay.
I like to imagine that it's actually just a toy phone, you know, with the big boggly eyes that the producer has given him, and they're like,
"Yes, Tom.
Warner Brothers is on the phone.
I've got some more ideas. Okay, what about Mission Impossible 8?
And I fly a big plane.
Yeah, and then not only do I land on the plane, I am the plane, and it's not but it's like a Russian plane. It's set in the near future, 5 years in the future. It's not wings, it's flying, like flapping like a bird. Yes, Tom, very good." And then he goes into the studio. It's like, "I was on the phone all night with the boss of Hollywood."
I think that's,
and it's not even like a studio head. It's like he thinks he's Mr. Hollywood. He thinks he's the guy who like runs the whole of Hollywood.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Viral videos like that have been very important during this time, and Vines. Oh my god, my love of Vines just surpasses anything I feel for you.
We should do an episode where you like introduce your favorite Vines.
I think I will have to.
It's like we can do it here, where you kind of have like a dress on, like you look like
a magician's assistant.
Rachel Riley on Countdown. You know, that kind of beautiful assistant type thing, and then you will just introduce like a top 10 of Vines that mean the most to you.
I've just thought of another thing that you do that annoys me, actually.
Go, you fucking hell, yeah, go on.
You always reference beautiful women. You always say it so sincerely. You'll be like, "Oh, Jennifer Lawrence, oh god, amazing actress, and so young to have achieved what she's achieved." Florence Pugh, god, she is an incredible, she's beautiful as well, isn't she? You know, Rachel Riley, beautiful. It's like, you don't fucking say that to me. You're just trying to make me jealous.
No, I'm not actually. I know that you get really insecure about those type of things, and I don't like that you get insecure about those type of things. So I'm going to keep on doing it until
you're testing my boundaries.
I'm going to keep you get over yourself because I should be allowed to talk about how attractive other people are.
That's
in
so
a civilized
toxic.
thing. Just think about how much you talk about attractive men.
I never talk about
Yes, you
attractive
do.
men. No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
I literally
All the
said
time.
Sacha Baron's. She said Sacha
No, but we
Baron Cohen
talk
was
about-
sexy once.
We talk about it all the time because I don't care. You don't notice you're doing it.
I've never talked about attractive men ever.
You talk about how attractive my friends are.
I know, but it
You
just
say
means your friends
they're
are beautiful.
gorgeous. Yeah? Which is completely fine. But imagine you introduce me to one of your friends. I'm like, she was gorgeous.
Yeah, but it's different.
Can you imagine?
It's different though. It's different.
Go on.
It's different.
Go on.
It's different
Go
because
on.
it's like it's me saying in like an
But do
affection.
it as a 90s comedy bit about the difference between men and women.
Okay, because the fact is, men aren't complimented in the same way that women are. Do you know what I mean? Like, men very rarely get told that they're beautiful. They very rarely get like a kind of sincere thing. Instead, it's all this kind of like jovial, jockish kind of thing. I like to think that it is nice for men to occasionally get told something sort of sincere and with a bit of a feminine touch, like, oh, you're beautiful type of thing, you know, oh, what a lovely little outfit that you put together. It's different for a man to say it about a woman because we view women in the sort of objective sense anyway. And when a man compliments a woman's looks, it tends to be more kind of about the attractiveness thing. Whereas me complimenting your friends for being attractive, that's me trying to like, you know, give them like a little boost in a way that maybe they wouldn't have had because of like, you know, toxic masculinity.
So would you say the same way, if for example, even though I only talk about celebrities being attractive, but if let's say I said you introduced me to a friend and I was like, she's gorgeous, and you felt jealous, the only real parallel example is if I introduced you to one of my friends, and you're like, he has incredible taste in film.
Yeah.
Is that because I guess you saying he's gorgeous, like I like complimenting men, and we talk a lot about attractive men and what makes men attractive.
Oh yeah. And also if I were to say how funny he is or how well he dresses or something like that.
Yeah,
Me saying he's gorgeous
I'm still
is just different.
not a little
You know
bitch about it, you know? I guess that's still the thing, is it's like...
I find it annoying, though, that you categorise me having very normal feelings of jealousy and anxiety and neuroses about whatever. You think of those as personal weaknesses, when actually they are pretty fucking normal things to have. Just because you don't express them, it doesn't mean that they're invalid.
I'm not saying they're invalid, I'm just saying let's stamp them out.
When I get, like, anxious
Let's get rid of them now.
When I ask questions about like your previous relationships or like, you know, dates that you've been in with other girls or whatever, and you literally ask me nothing about my previous romantic experiences, it does make me feel bad, you know? It makes me feel like there's a sort of power imbalance there. But at the same time, I respect the fact that you don't need that information.
Yeah.
I just hope that you don't judge me for needing that information.
But what's weird is if I talk about prior romantic encounters, it infuriates
Oh,
you.
no, you can't do it. Oh,
And then
no, you're not allowed to say a fucking thing.
When you talk about them, I don't care.
I know,
like, I enjoy it, it's
upsets
fine.
me that you don't care.
Yeah.
I want you to fucking care.
Yeah, so that seems to be the real clash. All right, do you have anything that you wanna plug, my dear?
Sure. Okay, well, me and my sister have a podcast called We Can't Talk About That right now, which is produced by Horatio Gould, and it is on YouTube and Spotify and Apple, and, you know, I hate it when people say this, but wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not wherever you get your podcast, because I'm the one who puts the places. It's only in Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and also I probably should put it other places. Everyone says that, and they're telling the truth, but it's actually my deficiency as producer that it isn't wherever you get your podcast.
Sure.
It's in 2 places. It's in 3 places. That's it.
So you can
sorry. It was your promo. Sorry.
You can watch that. And yes, you should. You know, if you've not watched.
Sorry. Also, it's like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The reason I only put it there is because, like, if you're listening on Google Podcasts, grow up.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
I know I can set it up so it's across all platforms, but I've made sure it's only on 3, and I reluctantly did Apple Podcasts. It was on Boys Gone Wild was only on Spotify, and then finally I put it on Apple Podcasts. But it was reluctant because I'm like, why don't you just get it from the best place to get it, which is Spotify? Apple Podcasts, their app is atrocious, and they're still much better than fucking Google Podcasts, like Castbox. Wherever you get your podcasts, no, can we all grow up and like... normally I'm like, support the little guy, but I want to focus it on. I want a complete monopoly where it's all in one place.
Spotify is very user friendly. So, and yeah, I guess what we kind of wanted to talk about was sort of the happy mundaneness of being in a relationship and stuff, and how that's kind of helped us through 2020. But we both find that so cringeworthy to talk about.
I'm going to put the other episode on Patreon.
Yeah,
so if you want to...
I'm on a Patreon episode of Boys Gone Wild, so you should subscribe to Horatio's Patreon.
Yeah, I got a full episode on Patreon that I think is really good.
And I hope this wasn't too painful.
No, it was all right. The leg touching is still a problem. Thanks a lot for listening. Once again, I'm going to give a shout out to Simon KG, who's just got on the £25 a month Patreon, which is, there's Boys Gone Mild, which is £3 a month, Boys Gone Riled, which is £5 a month, Boys Gone Wild, which is £10 a month, and then I threw in one just for those. I was like, maybe there'll be one absolute hero, a £25 a month, Boys Gone Absolutely Bloody Mental. So I'd be remiss not to mention how happy I am by Simon KG for being such a hero.
We love you, Simon KG.
Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you next week.
Bye.